hills of the Sierra Nevada mountains lies a quaint little ghost town, the town of Bodie. Bodie is near the California and Nevada border in the mountain range of Mono County, California. It is 75 miles southeast of Lake Tahoe. Bodie was established in 1859 by a man named, well, that's a mystery. Was his name William? Was it Waterman or Wakeman? His last name was Bodie, spelled B-O-D-Y, or Bodie, B-O-D-E-Y. There's always been confusion on his name, even in the 1900s. Documents, writings, and newspapers show a variation of names for this gentleman, but they all tie back to Sarah in Poughkeepsie as his wife. So I'm just going to call him Bodie, B-O-D-E-Y, and we're going to go with William. Mr. Bodie was a Dutchman. He was born in 1814. He lived in Poughkeepsie, New York with his wife, Sarah, and their 4 children. He was known to be a superior tinsmith. He owned a tin manufacturing company which was listed in the Poughkeepsie Village Directory with the address of 345 Main Street. His home was located on the corner of Southampton and Montgomery Street. The U.S. Census has him listed as Wakeman T. Bodie, born 1814. He was well respected in the community, but he was adventurous. So when he heard about the gold in California, he did what a lot of men did. He jumped on the bandwagon and sailed for California, leaving his 4 children and wife in New York. In 1849, he set sail and headed for San Francisco. He and Sarah corresponded through letters during those years. It's recorded that he lived in California for several years before he headed out to find gold in the Sierra Mountain Range. In 1859, he arrived in the mountains and set up a claim. He built a cabin. There's some confusion about who his prospector buddies were. Their names have been changed back and forth, so bear with me. Terrence Brodigan headed up the party. John C. Doyle, or W.M. Boyle, was one member. Pat or Tim Garrity was another, and then there was Bodie. And sometime before or after he reached the claim, he became friends with a native man who assisted him. His name was Black Taylor. He was half Cherokee. Now, 2 months after arriving and setting up camp, Black Taylor and him set out to stock up on supplies in Montville. Well, they were caught in a snowstorm and they got lost. They couldn't reach the cabin. At one point, Bodie couldn't go on any longer, so Black Taylor headed out without him. Bodie died in the blizzard. When spring rolled around, they found his body. He's buried in Ward Cemetary in Bodie, under William S. Bodie. The group of men continued and named the mining district Bodie after the man who died trying. Quartz deposits containing gold and silver were located in Bodie around September of 1860. The district was established in 1861, and a stamp mill was built. The district was a small mining camp with around 20 miners. Placers were noted, but a lack of water became a problem, and mining was sporadic in those years. A nearby town named Bridgeport, 7 miles north of Bodie, was voted in as the county seat in June of 1864. Bridgeport began as a campground for teamsters to haul lumber to the mines in Aurora, Bodie, and other local camps. The town of Bodie was spelled B-O-D-E-Y, but a local sign painter, one town over, misspelled it by writing B-O-D-I-E. The locals liked it so well they officially changed the spelling. In the summer of 1864, folks in New York with $500,000 to spend decided to invest in the mining town of Bodie. It was called the Empire Mining Company. For several years, mining was small scale. Eventually, the company was sold through bankruptcy in 1868. The new owners decided to run the mill more consistently, and the governor of California, Mr. Blasdell, bought a homestake mine in 1968. There was a large number of wealthy companies who bought claims in Bodie. They developed several mines and a second stamp mill. But things were slow in the late 1860s. Small groups continued mining, More mine shafts and tunnels were dug, and it kept small groups alive. Some residents would wash placer gravel to make ends meet. The mid-1870s rolled around, and gold became more promising with more discoveries. The settlement rose in status in 1876 after more gold was found. One mine named Bunker Hill collapsed, and the story goes that during this collapse, the mine opened up and they found a huge body of gold. Another story states that a claim next to it, called Fortuna, produced by the Standard Company, was the big payout in 1877. Either way, it opened up a huge opportunity for the town. The increase in gold attracted settlers, and by 1879, somewhere between 5,000 to 10,000 people were living there. Around 2,000 structures were built, 70 saloons, a bowling alley, dance halls, stores, churches, gambling halls, a school, and a schoolyard. Bodie became a boom town, and like so many other boom towns, Bodie was known for rowdiness, drinking, and gambling. There was a vigilante group referred to as the 601. Some say the 601 means 6 feet under, no trial, and one rope. In California, a man with a bad temper was known as Bad Man of Bodie, so my guess, Bodie was somewhat a sin city. Cutting loose on the weekends was commonplace amongst the hard-working miners. They needed an outlet and a way to spend their money. Back to mining. Bunker Hill changed hands a few times and ended up being the Standard Mill. The Standard Company produced $784,523 in gold and silver in 1877. In 2017, it would be valued at $17.5 million. The new surge kept the town going. Like I said, investors flocked to Bodie. They came from both coastlines. They dug deeper mines, and by the end of 1878, 22 mines were established in Bodie at a costly amount. By 1880, promises of gold in Montana, Arizona, and Utah was the new gossip. Many miners and companies pulled out of Bodie, looking for new opportunities to strike it rich. By the 1900s, a small group was left in Bodie, and the population fell to a few hundred. The Standard Company hung in there, but gave it up in 1913. They believed the land was depleted. Small companies stayed on, but it barely kept the community afloat. By the mid-1940s, the town was abandoned. Residents left with whatever they could carry out. The stores and bars had goods left on the shelves, and furnishings were left behind. Bodie is a well-maintained ghost town even to today. The California Division of Mines and Geology reports state a total of $33,954,919.29 was yielded from 1860 to 1941 from Bodie's mines. Let me show you some of the remaining buildings, tell you a little about the folks who resided in them, and the local businesses that made Bodie what it was. The Bodie Miners Union Hall was organized on December 22, 1877. The Miners Union Hall was built to completion June 28, 1878. Today, the hall is the home of the Museum of Bodie State Historic Park. Dances, school performances, concerts, games, and balls were held here. Church services were also conducted here before the churches were built. Services were conducted by Reverend Hinkle and the Roman Catholic services by Father Kaysen. The hall hosted the firemen's balls for 4 different fire companies in town. It raised money for uniforms and equipment. The hall served for a wrestling match July 19, 1880. The match took place between Rod McInnes and Con Driscoll. $200 bet was placed on each side. Crowds filled the hall. McInnes was a stone cutter and Driscoll was a pro wrestler from San Francisco, but McInnes won the match. This is the DeChambeau Hotel. The IOOF building next to it is the Independent Order of Oddfellows. The hotel was originally a post office, then converted to a boarding house and later a hotel, and it was again converted into the Bodie Cafe, a bar and cafe that was a business until the early 1930s, one of Bodie's latest operating businesses. Later, the hotel was owned by Frank and Lois Dolan. He was the son of the murdered Sheriff Dolan. In later years, the IOOF building became a health club. This is the Bodie Jail. The Bodie Jail was built in 1877. It was $800 to build, and it housed some shady characters. Bail was usually set for $5 for misdemeanors. John Wayne visited Bodie at least once and was photographed at the jail. The vigilante group 601 forcibly took Joseph DeRoche from his cell and hanged him. It was said that during a ball at the Miners' Union Hall on Saturday, January 15, 1881, Joseph DeRoche danced with the wife of Thomas Traylor, even though Traylor asked his wife not to. It's unknown if words were exchanged or if some other argument took place, but DeRoche left early. When Traylor and his wife left the hall, they walked down Main Street and turned the corner of Main and Low Street. DeRoche jumped out and shot Traylor in the head. DeRoche was immediately arrested but was handed over to Deputy Farnsworth, who was drunk at the time, and DeRoche quickly escaped. DeRoche made his escape down Goat Ranch Road, but was caught about 8 miles away, and he was returned to Bodie. He was hanged by the Bodie 601 vigilante group on Monday, January 24, 1881. This was taken from Bodie.com. Here's a passage that was printed by the Bodie Free Press newspaper. Quote, Judge Lynch held his first court session in Bodie early on Monday morning and passed judgment on a criminal whose crime is already recorded and impressed on every mind in this community. The tragic end of DeRoche, the murderer, was at once awful and impressive. You can find the full article on Bodie.com. The schoolhouse was originally the Bon Ton Lodging House in 1879. A small boy burnt the first schoolhouse down. He had gotten in trouble at school and he was sent home, so he went to the back side of the school and began setting fire to the dry brush just for fun. It spread to the building and burnt it to the ground. This is the home of Mr. James Stewart Kane. He became a very wealthy man living in Bodie. He started several businesses. He came to Bodie at the age of 25 looking to make a fortune, and he built an empire. His first business was bargain lumber. He transported lumber across Mono Lake to Bodie. The timber was used to build homes, burned for cooking and heating, shoring up mines. The wood was used to fire the boilers on steam engines. He later ran mines, and he became the president of Southern Consolidated Mining Company. In 1890, he purchased Bodie Bank from E.L. Benedict and started buying property in town. His family owned the bulk of the land before the state park took over. This is the home of David Victor Kane, the son of James Kane. Martin Giannatoni was one of the last 3 people living in Bodie in 1943. He took care of 170 buildings mandated by the owner of the land. This is Boon's store and warehouse. It was owned by Harvey Boon. He was a direct descendant of Daniel Boone, and in July of 1884, the building was almost destroyed by a fire. Close to an entire block on Green Street was destroyed by the fire. Mr. Boone also owned a livery business and the Boone stable in town. He was one of the 5 men in October of 1879 who formed the Bodie Water Company for the purpose of supplying the town with water to fight fires. Boone and his partner J.W. Wright in 1881 paid Mono County real estate taxes on $25,313 worth of property. As for the dark curse of Bodie, legend has it the Bodie curse will haunt anyone who removes the old artifacts or belongings from the town. Park rangers have received packages from past visitors who feel cursed, so they return the items. Conservative members of the community gathered on the south side of Bodie. Children's plays, balls, 4th of July parades, and family gatherings were held there. But on the north side of town, it's where you'd find saloons, brothels, gambling halls, and the Western gangsters, a tougher crowd. That's where you'd see murderers, bar fights, stagecoach robberies, and shootouts. Earlier I mentioned the death of Sheriff James P. Dolan. He died as a result of gunshot wounds in July of 1915. Sheriff Dolan was attempting to arrest 2 outlaws who terrorized a rancher. The citizens were outraged by his death, so they formed a posse and tracked down the criminals in the Mono Craters. Both outlaws were killed in a shootout by the posse. Sheriff Dolan was the 15th sheriff to serve in Bodie. After researching the town of Bodie, I realized how many good people actually lived there. I'm sure there's a million more stories I could uncover. Thanks for watching and have a great day.